Hi all, and thank you for joining my channel. Now, I don't really do debunks of individual channels, but Orphan Red's recent behavior has been getting on my nerves. In this video, we will be taking a look at Orphan Red and really show how much of a charlatan she is. Everything about how she presents herself suggests that she is trying to come across as smart and sexy, and note how she dresses and always presents her content from the intimacy of her bedroom, but at the same time she pushes a strong message out about sexuality and how it shouldn't be trivialized. Now, with some speculation, you could argue that she is trying to communicate that she is a strong, smart and independent woman who is not accessible to just any random guy, but you are special and you as a viewer have exclusive access to her most intimate space. Her act is all about appearing to have an in-depth conversation whilst flirting with the viewer, and actually one of her signature moves is to giggle, look away and flutter her eyelashes. Now, to all the men out there who fall for this shit, you really need to reevaluate what characteristics you look for in a partner, because this behavior is not indicative of a strong, smart and independent woman. It is indicative of an insecure teenage girl. Now, I'm not judging, but I just wanted to point out the discrepancy between what she says and what she does. Now, I don't really take umbrage with any individual component of the presentation. You have the right to present yourself in whatever way you want. Your own personal expression of feminism is exactly that. It's personal, and no one has the right for you to criticize you for that. But the contradictions in the message and the presentation make the whole thing pretty questionable to me. Last time I checked, people of substance don't need to rely on these cheap gimmicks to get their message out there. Now, I don't want to dwell on this much longer though, because beyond this, I really do not care, and I want to focus on what she says. Orphan Red regularly talks about trolls on her channel, and she dismisses anyone who challenges what she says as a troll. She started actively looking for people who may disagree with her in live chat so she can proceed unchallenged.
Are there any people that we need to get rid of in chat? Are there any trolls in there that need to be sorted out? So you have to stop lying in my chat, because I'm going to time you out, but if you keep lying in my chat, I'm actually going to boot you out and block you completely. Flexipacitor argues, you're making the positive claim and haven't demonstrated it to actually work, and you're just deflecting. Okay, so first of all, you're being annoying. That annoys me, so I'm putting you in just a short timeout.
That last one is interesting because 2 minutes later she notices that Validation Boy has come into the chat and posts these comments. But this is fine according to her. She has also lashed out at people creating video criticisms of her content with copyright claims, even though it is all covered under fair use. Now, this is pretty ironic considering how she accuses the scientific community of suppressing alternatives to current theory. Now, she's trying to establish herself as an authority figure on the topic of science for the flat earth community. She tries to achieve this by appearing to be unchallenged and bolstering up her credentials. Another example of this is her constantly banging on about her Mensa membership, showing that she does have a high IQ.
Dear Sasha Cullen, welcome to Mensa!
But it doesn't take much to figure out that she's full of shit.
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
One of the key words that Orphan Red bandies about is the word scientism. She takes this to mean a religion that scientists follow rather than the actual meaning of the word. To clarify, the word scientism refers to a philosophical stance that asserts that everything in the universe can be investigated using the scientific method and explained in a unified theory of everything. Personally, I've only seen this word being used by philosophers and theologians who are getting shirty about scientists investigating their claims and either rejecting them or incorporating them into scientific theory. The issue is not whether it's being incorporated or rejected. Their issue tends to be that their topic is snatched out of their hands as it becomes a scientific discipline rather than a playground for pipe-smoking philosophers. Orphan Red uses the word scientism to mean the process of cherry-picking data to fit the model and rejecting what doesn't fit. Naturally, she is oblivious to the irony of her statement, as this practice is rife in the flat earth community, not in the scientific community. The issue isn't that she just spouts horseshit like most other flat earth content creators. It is more that she mixes half-truths with untruths. I say untruths because a lie requires an understanding of the truth. What Orphan Red presents is bullshit in its purest form, a series of statements with no regard for the truth. She will frequently claim that data which does not conform to the current models are dismissed, and that alternative ideas are rejected on the basis that they do not conform to the model. And this is the scientism thing that she likes to talk about, and she asserts that investigating alternatives to this current scientific theory is a risk to the scientist's reputation and career.
One of the ways that science has become scientism, right? This blind faith religion that's rigid, that rejects heretics. So if you come up with a theory that goes against what the mainstream ideology is in scientism, you're really pushed out.
In the next clip, she talks about how a group found different results than what contemporary science predicted.
The first group that showed that the diameter of the proton was wrong by, I think it was orders of magnitude. Like I think it was 100 times the actual size was 100 times greater than the size that was accepted as truth, as fact by scientism, right? The first group, they were mocked and ridiculed, they were put down, and they were kind of then ignored.
I won't play the whole segment as this video is at risk of getting a bit long already. Now, she's trying to make the point that these groups were being dismissed by the scientific community. What actually happened is that the scientific community said, that's interesting. So let's test this a bit more, see if it's repeatable, and then we'll need to reevaluate the model. And they did. Now, one of her favorite topics is dark matter. She asserts that dark matter is just something that physicists have invented to make sure that reality fits the model presented by general relativity, rather than people making a concerted effort to come up with a better model. Now, as it stands, this is half true, or more like a quarter true. The reason why dark matter is hypothesized is that we observe motion in the universe which is not consistent with general relativity if we only account for baryonic matter. Now, that is the matter that we are all familiar with. There is a lot of evidence suggesting that dark matter is a thing, but it is still hypothetical. The bit that she says, which is outright untrue, is an assertion that anyone who does try to come up with an alternative model gets ostracized from the scientific community, that they're somehow risking their careers in doing so if they do it. So here is a table of some of the alternatives that are being developed. I will list the main proponent of the hypothesis, and I have selected a paper for each hypothesis. The table shows the impact factor of the journal it was published in, along with the number of citations. I suppose the first one is Milgram's hypothesis, developed in 1983, and this was published in a journal with an impact factor of 5.5 and cited nearly 3,000 times. This alternative was the most popular one for some time. However, measurements are starting to come in, and it's showing that this hypothesis is starting to crack at the seams. However, it does have a little brother called tensor vector scalar gravity, which introduces a relativistic correction, and it has been getting a lot of attention with 1,598 citations. Now, next we have F of R theory, which was first proposed in 1970. The first paper was published in an impact factor 4.9 journal from the Royal Society and cited 511 times. Just like Milgram's hypothesis and its little brother, you can see that this is not being swept under the rug. These are highly prestigious journals, and the papers are being picked up and cited by scientists. It may also be worth noting that the number of citations is probably underestimated here, as these are pre-World Wide Web publications and it's more difficult to track earlier citations. But when it comes to F of R theory, this model has significant predictive power and has already shown that it is as good as general relativity in many respects. However, There are still a lot of kinks to be worked out. Now, F of R theory has been picked up by a scientist named Andrei Starobinsky, who in the past 10 years has picked up 3 highly prestigious prizes for his work on this topic, and he works as a senior scientist at the highly prestigious Landau Institute for Theoretical Physics. These people are proposing alternatives to the current established scientific theory, and they are very far from being ostracized by the community. Now, the last one I'll mention is Eric Verlinde's theory of entropic gravity, which he first formally posited in 2011, and it was published in an impact factor 5.5 journal and cited 1192 times. He was awarded the Spinoza Prize, the highest award available to Dutch scientists that comes with a €2.5 million grant for further research. The awarding committee listed the development of his theory of entropic gravity as one of the main contributing factors to him receiving the award. Now, this list is not exhaustive. We haven't even touched quantum gravity in this list, and there are many more alternatives to general relativity being developed, and most of these alternatives do not require dark matter to work. I hope that I've made it very clear that these people who are trying to develop alternative theories are very far from being suppressed or putting their careers or reputations at risk. In fact, these people are being celebrated within the scientific community. These guys are rock stars. However, it is worth noting that none of these theories have the same predictive power as general relativity yet. But maybe one day one of these will replace it. I think that this makes it very clear that Orphan Red is spouting bullshit when she talks about all these scientists being suppressed by the establishment or putting their careers and reputations at risk. Again, I'm not saying that she is lying, but she has no regard for the truth either. Otherwise, she would have Googled it. Okay, I will admit that it's not a quick 5-second Google job to find out this information. It took me almost 10 minutes. But having said that, I roughly know where to look. But then again, I was interrupted quite a few times as well. But I'm sure that she could probably do with reducing the length of her live streams so she has more time to do some desk research. The particularly objectionable part of her content is not that she's just pushing flat earth, but it is how she does it. She has a tendency to string together lots of complex sounding sentences that give the superficial impression that she knows what she's talking about. And this is all in line with her trying to establish herself as an authority. She's trying her best to appear as if she knows more about science than the people in the flat earth debunking community or even professional scientists. But when you listen carefully, you very quickly realize that a lot of the time, she isn't actually saying anything.
Please tell me what precisely in the conceptual notion of time is tangibly acted upon by what precisely in matter such that time bends in accordance with this notional concept of relative distances between objects that we call space, in response to the proximal or distal presence of matter over infinite distances, and how, again, precisely is this relative distance between things materially,
tangibly woven together, interlaced, braided, intertwined,
with a conceptual device that we use just to track changes in our conscious experience of reality.
What she said there means absolutely nothing, but the way she words it is designed to make it superficially appear as if she knows what she's talking about. But she does a bit of extra work to make it all appear convincing. For example, we can take a look at this video where she does present a pretty good description of the philosophy of science. Now, I won't play this bit back to spare you the visuals, and I'll just read the transcript as it will be quicker. Science can't give us truth. All science really can do is say we have collected observations as data points and we have analyzed and assessed these data and we've interpreted them to the best of our knowledge, and these are the conclusions that we've drawn. And these conclusions are not truth. They are simply the best theories that we can put forth to explain a phenomenon that we have observed with our current understanding of the world, with our current knowledge and our current paradigm of understanding, and that's very different from factual truth. Factual truth is proven. 2 plus 2 equals 4. It really doesn't matter if you get more information later on in human history. 2 plus 2 will always be found to be equal to 4. But in science, the conclusions that are established are not factual truth. They are just the current explanations that we provide to explain phenomena to the best of our ability. That's all it is. Now, it is not the best description, but it is a pretty decent one for a layperson. She then goes on a bit about bloodletting and people mistaking regression to the mean as evidence of medical interventions working. But this doesn't really matter too much. She has used this bit to establish authority, and that is important for what follows.
Sometimes your master's degree supervisor will ask/demand that you do a log transformation on reaction times. This is usually done when she's under pressure to publish because she's going to a conference in China to present the results of her work, and she has no publishable results because there's actually no effect of her experiment. And so you do a log transformation, and what that does is it takes any kind of noise in the data, any kind of random blip, and it amplifies it because you're kind of compressing the data. And so any noise turns into what looks like an effect. And so by doing a log transformation of the data, you can effectively produce a statistically significant effect result that is then publishable.
So after having established herself as this authority, she then talks about log transformations and asserts that just by doing a log transformation, you can make noise in the data appear like signal, even if there's nothing there. Now, she throws in words such as statistical significance, which is meaningless, as a properly performed statistical test doesn't actually give a damn about whether your data is log transformed or not. This is because you account for this in a statistical model, or you face derision during peer review. What she is saying is fundamentally incorrect as well, but she doesn't care about that, for she is not interested in truth. But just for poops and giggles, here is some noise. And here it is on the log scale. As you can see, even on a log scale, it's just noise. Okay, it's a log-scaled noise, but still, there's fuck all there. There's one last example. I just wanted to show a snippet of one video where she confidently presents a massive load of bullshit.
A camera out by Saturn trying to take a picture of the light bouncing off the rings of Saturn would not be able to form an image without a conscious observer there to collapse the photon probabilities, the probability wave distribution of photons into particles that can then form an image on the sensors. Without a conscious observer, you have no image. What you have are just interference patterns. That's it. So basically, if no one is in the Cassini spacecraft watching the camera take the pictures, if there's no one in the rings of Saturn watching this happen, then those photons are going to maintain their probability distribution state. They're not going to collapse into particles. So they're not going to form an image on the sensor in the Cassini.
Now here she is presenting her reasons for concluding that Cassini's images of Saturn cannot be real, and she invokes wave-particle duality to back up her claim. Firstly, her description of wave-particle duality is flawed at a very basic level. Secondly, and this is very important, it doesn't even apply. But it does give her the opportunity to use language involving photons and probability distributions and wave function collapse so she can sound clever to her audience. Even though she acts like one, I am not going to say that she is a stupid bimbo or anything, because she is clearly very, very smart. It takes a significant amount of brain power and a lot of creativity to be a charlatan. I'm going to close off this video with a few other examples of her making authoritative statements which are complete and utter bullshit.
It should be possible to measure even extremely small deviations of the movement of the electrons in a terbium. Again, that is incorrect, because electrons are probabilistic. Electrons that are unobserved, unmeasured, until you measure the electron, it doesn't have a precise location. Its location is a probability that's smeared across the entire universe. And there's a probability that if you look here, you'll find it here, and if you look there, you'll find it there. But until you actually measure it, it's not here or there. It's in a superposition state of being in both locations, as well as every other single point across the entire universe. So this is a lie. It can't measure even extremely small deviations of the movement of the electrons, because the electrons are both moving and not moving until they're measured.
What she is trying to assert here is that it's not possible to measure the location of an electron because its location is given by a probability density function. So it's not possible to measure an electron's location unless you measure it, and therefore you can't measure it. So in short, she is saying that the scientists can't do the thing that they said they did because they would need to do the thing that they said they did, which they did.
But that space isn't real. That distance between objects, it's not actually real, because prior to our observation, it doesn't exist. The probability distribution wave of both objects overlap, and so there is no distance between them. There's no space between any unobserved objects, because every particle in our universe has a probability distribution wave covering the entirety of the universe. And so each object's probability distribution wave will overlap.
What she is saying here is that space is not real and it is merely an artifact of the wave function collapse as you measure the position of a particle. It makes absolutely zero sense, but she also kindly neglects to mention that a particle's wave function is actually a function of space. In this video, she also has the audacity to show these images to try and bolster up what she is saying and make her appear like an authority on the subject matter. These are graphs of different wave functions, and guess what the independent variable is on these graphs? Position in space.
Private companies launch rockets that orbit a spherical Earth. You're so funny. Because we do know that on a flat plane, you can, I don't want to get struck by copyright for showing other people's content, so you'll have to look it up yourself. But if you do have like a super cooled, sorry, I'm very distracted, so I'm having a hard time finding my words for this. But there are ways to set up magnetic systems so that you have, I guess, like a kind of like a Laplacian place, but points in which you can levitate objects, right?
In this bit, she talks about the Meissner effect, which is actually pretty cool, but for this to work, either the Earth would need to be a magnetic monopole generating an incredibly large field, and the satellite needs to be kept below the Curie temperature of the superconductor it is made of. This means that we need to connect it to a hose which pumps cryogens into the satellite continuously. You see, this is problematic. Alternatively, the entire Earth would have to be a supercooled superconductor and the satellite is a magnet. Either way, this is batshit crazy. So all in all, we can conclude that Orphan Red is a true charlatan. Now, some of the things she says are actually accurate, or at least pretty close to being accurate. Other things are completely false, but she does not care about the truth. All she cares about is whether you will give her that super chat money.
Our possible thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it.